Ben Fowlkes here with Yahoo Sports. I am talking with UFC middleweight champion Dricus Du Plessis, who fights Israel Adesanya at UFC 305 in Perth, Australia on August 17th. Dricus, first of all, one of the things that's interesting to me, I was looking at some of the numbers on, especially betting odds on you before the last few fights. As you kind of climbed at the middleweight rankings, the last few fights, it seems like every single time you open as an underdog. And some of the times, by the time the fight rolls around and the betting action has come in, you've flipped and you've become the favorite. But it seems like odds makers and maybe some MMA fans, when they look at you, even though you're winning all these fights, you haven't lost in the UFC, they still look at you and think like, okay, but maybe this one, maybe the next one is the one that he loses. And I'm curious if you're kind of aware of that perception and what you think that's about.
Yeah, I guess so. Doesn't really, at the end of the day, you can have all the odds in the world, but there's no odds fighting a fight. There's no odds when that door closes. Um, I've been the underdog for, especially at the top, for every single fight. Yeah, I mean, obviously Robert Whitaker, the Strickland fight. I think even Brunson, not even sure, but that it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I know all my friends, they make a lot of money like that, so they're happy with that.
Yeah,
But
that was going to be my next
that,
question is when you, especially for the Rob Whitaker fight, that was a good example where you came in as kind of a heavy underdog in that one. It
yeah,
didn't seem like a lot of people were giving you a chance. Do you tell your friends, hey, I got this one, don't worry about it?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and they just always know. I mean, all of them, they just see what I'm putting in. They just see what's up, and they know what's coming. And they've been there for years. The friends, the circle, family, all of those. They know what's going on. They see me putting in the work. They see what I've been doing. They know over the past 15 years what I've been doing, what I've sacrificed, the hours and hours I've put into to do this. So yeah, I mean, being the underdog, I mean, that's great, but it's gonna feel kind of good being the underdog with that nice shiny belt around the shoulder. That always helps.
Yeah. Well, the the thing that happened with the Robert Whitaker fight and afterwards where, you were offered the title fight with Israel Adesanya kind of very quickly after that Robert Whitaker fight, and you chose instead to say, "Hey, I want to take some time off and heal up a little bit and not rush into a title fight," which, we've seen that decision go poorly for other people in the past, and it worked out really well for you. Take me back to that and tell me a little bit about what the calculation was in your mind when you got that offer. I got to imagine when you first hear it, there's a part of you that has to want to jump at it.
Absolutely, and let me tell you this: I obviously took no damage in the Whitaker fight, not at all. But it was not even 3 weeks. It was literally my last session before we flew out. I completely tore the ligaments in my ankle, and I couldn't kick before the Whitaker fight. For it was 18 days, didn't kick once. Um, I could barely even walk after that session, and the next day I was set to fly out to Vegas. So it was a very interesting thing because now we're thinking of pulling the Whitaker fight, but I said, listen, guys, we are already fit, and we had more than enough reason. If you went on medical records to go, we have to call this fight.
Yeah.
And any doctor, the UFC's doctors, everybody would say, call this fight. But I said, I'm already fit. I don't need that foot to win the fight. I mean, it would have helped to have it, but if it's not ready in 18 days, then so be it. But I'm already fit. I've already done all the work for the camp. This is just something, and with that adrenaline, I won't feel it in the fight. It's fine. So we went, we took the fight, obviously felt great in the fight. And then afterwards, no, they gave me that fight on 8 weeks' notice, 8 weeks after that fight. And people go, but the Whitaker fight you didn't take any damage. And correct, I didn't take any damage. But the fight camp, I did. I was injured. So making the decision wasn't that hard. It was hard mentally and emotionally, because I'm a fighter. I don't want to turn down a fight ever. And especially fighting for the world title. But I was not going to be doing it in those circumstances. It would have been not only, it's not bravery, it would have been stupidity to do that. I wouldn't have been able to train even at a 60% with that. I wasn't able to run. I wasn't able to move properly in terms of just boxing. I wasn't able to kick for sure. It was, and then we have to realize as well, I'm 29 years old when at that stage, and I have a long career ahead of me. So these are injuries that could basically, it can be an injury or a niggle for the rest of your career if you don't look after it correct. So we made the decision, and from a medical standpoint and from any sense, it was a pretty easy decision. And I said I actually was ready to when I declined that fight. I was making ready for another contender fight because I thought the UFC was going to be pissed off me, and I think they were. I honestly think they were kind of pissed off, but it worked out great for them in the end. I think everything worked out. The Strickland Adesanya fight in Australia was great, and it changed up the whole dynamic of the division because now you have me as champion, you have Adesanya, me and Adesanya, which is an amazing fight, even bigger now that I've become champion. Even bigger than the first time, in my opinion. And then you have Whitaker fighting comes out. That brings another contender. You have Sean Strickland, the rematch, because since we went to a split decision. Now the possibilities are endless. So everything worked out the way it should. And I always believe that. I always have, and everything will work out the way it should. The only thing I have control over is how hard I work and how good I perform. And that is basically it. The injury wasn't my fault, and there's nothing I could do about it. But it all worked out in the end, like I knew it would.
You mentioned, the split decision in the Sean Strickland fight. It at least seemed to me that one of the things that made the big difference there is that while he's kind of a volume striker, you seemed to be the guy throwing harder and throwing the harder shots. And it seemed like maybe with the judges, when they're looking at it and they're trying to decide who to give each round to, that maybe they're going to go with you when it's very close because it seems like you're throwing a lot harder, regardless of how cleanly they're landing, or even if he happens to be throwing more total strikes, it seems like yours are more powerful. And I'm curious if that's a conscious choice on your part. Is it just that that's how hard you're trying to throw at all times, or like, are you aware that, hey, the judges are looking for damage, and so if you seem to be the guy throwing the harder shots, that they count for more than the guy throwing more total shots?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's kind of hard to make that calculation while you're in there getting punched in the face and punching someone. So at the end of the day, advancing forward in that fight, I knew he was a volume striker. I know I had the harder punch. He was a lot harder to hit than originally anticipated. And, he showed it many times before, and he showed it against me. In the first 2 rounds, I was really struggling to really get to him. In round 3, round 2, I won for sure. Round 3, 4, and 5, depending on who you ask. But I started figuring him out. By round 3, I had him figured out. I had figured out, okay, this is how he throws the jab, and that's why he landed a lot less. I was chopping at the leg, so that was working. But at the end of the day, in that fight, I had 23 minutes of forward pressure, of going forward. And if you look at a fight from a pure striking point of view, where it's very close, one guy is landing the quantities, like you said, but one guy is landing the big shots. Then the guy going forward and the aggressor of the situation is probably going to be the guy that, if there's not something crazy happening, if it's just a back and forth fight, but one guy's moving forward at all times, that's gonna swing a judge 100%, and that makes sense to me and to anybody in the world. If you're going forward, you're putting on the pressure. I'm dictating the pace of the fight, and I'm making the fight a war. That is why, in the striking, they gave me that fight, and that is taking out of the equation the fact that we are MMA fighters. That is taking out the equation that I landed a couple of head kicks, I landed the low kicks, I landed a couple of body kicks, quite a few actually. I landed 4 or 5 takedowns. So taking the MMA aspect out of it, just being the aggressor and controlling the cage was a big deciding factor. And then when you bring in the kicks and the takedowns with that, that's why it was a no-brainer. The split decision was more shocking to me than anything else.
Well, how do you think that style plays against a guy like Israel Adesanya, who seems like a little bit more dangerous of a counterfighter than Sean Strickland is? That, we've seen guys who feel like they have him in trouble and go after him, and, Alex Pereira paid the price for that. What kind of a fight do you expect it to be with Israel Adesanya?
Yeah, 100%. It's a completely different fight, and that's why we go. Every fight needs to be approached as an individual fight. I didn't fight Sean Strickland the way I fought Whitaker at all. Not at all the same fight. And it might look the same. It might look the same to somebody on the outside, but from a professional's point of view, you can see the differences quite clearly. And the same with Adesanya. He's a completely different fighter than Sean Strickland. So a completely different plan to fight him. And with him being a counter fighter, accounted for, he does come forward at times, and he goes for it. And absolutely, like you said, don't make the mistakes those that came before me made. And that's basically what's going to be a key to victory for me. Not making the same mistakes that those who lost to him made.
He's been known to talk a lot. He's really played up at times the African angle between the two of you. Do you expect it to be sort of a tense fight week where you guys are going at each other a lot?
Maybe. We'll see. We'll see how he behaves and on how I behave, and I'll match that energy. Because at the end of the day, we're so close to a fight. No matter who says what, at the end of the day, it's going to be, we have about a week left until the octagon door closes. Whatever he says is not going to make any difference to me. It's not going to make any difference to what's happening next week Sunday. So, I'm assuming that the fans would like to rile it up. I'm assuming it's going to be interesting to see what his energy is, because up until this point, in terms of the energy that we are used to and that we're seeing right now, doesn't look like a man is ready to kill to get that belt, and I'm ready to kill to keep it.
Well, lastly, with you being the underdog for so many of these fights, if you go into this one against Israel Adesanya, who was the champion for a while and was a highly respected champion, if you go in there in Australia and beat him there, do you think that's when you'll get a little bit more respect from fans, from odds makers, from media? Do you think that that's the fight where you come out of that the winner and people go, "Hey, this guy's the champion and deserves to be treated as such"?
Man, to be quite honest with you, makes absolutely no difference to me. I have my people, my team, my family, my circle, the people who know, and I have my fans out of my country. They are the best in the world. I mean, they believe. I can tell you that. And if the rest of the people who don't believe, I honestly don't care. I mean, look at what I've done. Look at what I'm doing. That's the only thing that really, really matters to me. So yeah, I mean, if they can keep writing me off, they can keep treating me as an underdog. Does not matter to me. I'm getting paid great money. I'm living my dream, and I'm champion of the world, and that's the only things that matter.
Great. But we'll wrap it up there. Dricus, thank you again for the time.
Thank you so much.